how liberal ideology hollowed out masculinity and manufactured a crisis. 75,000 Canadian men died prematurely in a single year, and only now does the federal government claim men are worth helping. After nearly a decade of shaming masculinity, dismissing fit male frustration, and framing men as toxic, the Liberals say they are suddenly concerned about men's health. A Movember in University of British Columbia report shows men are more likely to delay seeking care, feel ignored when they do, and suffer disproportionately from mental illness, addiction, and ending their own lives. Many deaths are entirely preventable, but culture shapes behavior. When masculinity is treated as a pathology, when male anger or dissent is portrayed as dangerous, men disengage from institutions, including healthcare. A man who does not trust the culture does not trust its doctors, bureaucrats, or messaging. Now, the same government that helped create these conditions wants to roll out a men's health strategy. You cannot spend years telling men they are the problem and then expect them to trust a government-designed solution. Until hostility towards masculinity is confronted, this quote-unquote strategy is not reform, it is guilt dressed up as concern. So is it possible for a government that stigmatized masculinity to now credibly lead a men's health strategy?
No. Just no. I did think it was funny too that, you know, the woman that's the woman that's leading this charge. Come on, guys, what are we talking about here? This whole thing has gotten out of hand and it's been getting out of hand over the last 10 years. And there's a lot of spokes on this wheel as well. But ultimately, you know, they've been using this language in society that all masculinity is toxic, even though it's an innate male characteristic. And you know, there's varying degrees of it, right? Some people are super masculine, some people are super effeminate, and that's fine. It doesn't really matter where you fall. Just pegging it all as toxic and as privilege is what they'll say, has been the wrong thing to do for a very long time. And I find it frustrating that we're now looking at these people as the solution to the problem, or they think that they're the solution to the problem. It's just like any government issue, really. You know, they create the problem, then they're going to give you the solution. The thing is, like, how many truly liberal men do you know that are masculine? You know,
or happy?
Yeah, right. So I mean, and the knock-on effects here are quite bad. 75,000 people a year. This was in 2023. I imagine the numbers are similar or worse now. 25,000 were from medical illness related. When you look at U.S. and Canada together, 40,000 are from suicides, which is brutal. We're four to five. So 80% of suicides are men over women. They don't feel like they've got anywhere to go. Right. And so for me, looking at the group that made you feel more isolated and that you were wrong for your natural instincts, now they're like, we're going to fix you. Are you kidding? How are you going to fix me? You going to castrate me? What's your solution here? And it is interesting. And I'm being perfectly honest when I say this.
You know how how they're planning to fix us, right?
Tell me.
By making us talk to liberal white women.
Yeah, right.
Like that's going to be what they do, is like create a bureaucracy where you can or subsidize therapy sessions and help talk lines, which is dominated by
liberal white women. Now you're not wrong. Like, so there are multiple peer-reviewed studies that have shown correlations between higher testosterone levels and conservative Republican attitude and behavior. And so there are you can link one of these in here if people want to look at it. But here's the headline of the article. It's an NIH article, study rather. Testosterone administration induces a red shift in Democrats. It's very real. So if you think about this from a power and profit perspective, the more emasculated men are, the more likely you're going to keep them on your side as a constituent, as a voter too. So, you know, until the body count showed up, the Liberals had no interest in kind of going the other direction on this. But now I think they need to seem like they're doing something to correct course or to help, because otherwise they do look like the guilty party, right? I just don't think they're the ones to do it. I think that you can't bureaucratize your way out of cultural collapse. They're the ones that created it.
Yeah, and I mean, at the end of the day, what this comes down to and why I think so many men are struggling silently is purposelessness. Like, it's just they don't have a direction, they don't have an aim, and hey, maybe a World War I will, or maybe another World War will bring back the energy for the boys.
As much as I hate this, I don't want to see it happen, but you're not wrong.
It's actually crazy when you look at. There's a great book, Tribe by Sebastian Junger, and he talks about this, about how you would imagine that during times of conflict, people's mental health declines, but it's actually the opposite. And the closer the conflict is, also the more it bolsters meaning and also group cohesion, which makes sense.
100%. You don't have to think about your purpose when you have to get up every day and have a purpose. Purpose is a moving target, though. I want to stop for a second and just say, often people get stuck in this bad loop where they think their purpose is one thing in life. Purpose is a moving target. Purpose, every chapter in your life has a different purpose. Your purpose when you're 20 years old is very different than your purpose when you're 70-year-old, you're retired and have grandkids. You always need to have a purpose, but it is a moving target. And I just wanted to highlight that because I don't want to see a third world war. It's not what I want to see. But if there was 5 years of war, 4 or 5 years, all men, capable men, would have a purpose. Mm-hmm. Again, not a great thing, but and then when the war was over, it would change. But living a life with purpose, it's like I say this all the time, momentum breeds success. When you start moving and have success, you have more success. When you have purpose in life, if that chapter closes and you have some wherewithal of what's going on in your life and how you did find purpose, you will find it again. You will find it again. I think I agree with you totally. Go on.
Well, and actually, just to bolster what you're saying there is, even during World War II, when the Germans were bombing Britain and they needed all hands on deck, like even the mental institutions started emptying out because people would be like, okay, I'm now the ambulance driver, I'm cleaning up the debris and all this kind of stuff, and they like actually were seemingly getting better.
I just pictured Heath Ledger in the Joker because the ambulance blowing it up in the background.
But where I was going with this is, not that I think I can already see like the Onion or the Babylon Bee headline of just like, is World War the cure for male loneliness? But to the point of how we got here, it is by just saying to men, and especially young men, hey, the most virtuous thing you can do is sit down, shut up, get out of the way. Every single urge you have or every ambition you have is actually just a reinforcement of what's wrong with the world and what's causing everything to be bad. And so the best thing you can do is just get out of the way.
And to top it off, be non-binary.
Yeah.
Literally be like, I don't even know what sex I am anymore.
Yeah.
Like they're just poisoning these kids. I totally agree. I mean, I think you can correct course, but I just don't know that they're going to have the playbook. I really don't. And I agree with you.
No, I don't think they can.
Even if here's the challenge, even if they came out with a reasonable playbook in terms of step by step, let's just say they did. Again, go back to the institutions. The ones executing this will be the ones that created the problems, and they will not execute it efficiently or effectively. It just won't happen. Now, one last thing I do want to say, though, and you have say whatever you like after, obviously. One last thing I'd want to say is men have to take some responsibility here. This isn't like, hey, men have been, put down by society and, told that masculinity is toxic and all your natural instincts are wrong and sit down and shut up. I know that that's happened. But if you want things to get better, you do have to step up and you have to sort of enforce or impose your will on the world. You have to take the opportunity to go, okay, I'm not happy. Things aren't working for me. I am going to take some responsibility for this. I'm not a victim and I am going to fix it. You need to take action and you need to find your purpose. So yes, we need to correct course. We need to give these men an opportunity to get better and not have 75,000 dying prematurely every year, obviously. But in addition to an effective framework, men do need to step up. Men do need to, because it's this thing. I mean, you've heard it a million times. No one can do your push-ups for you, right? You can outsource a lot of things, but not your push-ups, not building a body, not being healthy. Same with this. You can outsource a lot of this to framework and this and that and society changing, but ultimately you have to get up and you have to do those push-ups. So, I just, as much as that may be challenging for some people to hear, given where society is currently at, it is essential if you want to correct course.
Yeah, and I think you also have to be willing to hold some sort of risk there. I mean, even just for what little we're doing, I've lost work before, I've lost relationships, and it's not fun. But at the end of the day, it's the only thing that really keeps me feeling like I have dignity in this world that hates all men. The one tweak that I'd maybe just say is that I don't know if it's as much about enforcing your will on the world in the masculine, but it's more so about not allowing the world or others to enforce their will on you. And so it's kind of like this actually like middle ground between the two is where it's just being essentially an immovable object. It's not necessarily about having to conquer. Actually, I think great men are more focused on conquering themselves than others, but um, I do think that, yeah, it's at the point where you're not going to wait for any of these social institutions, whether it be universities or the government or whatever it be. They're not all of a sudden going to change their mind on masculinity and actually allow you a place back in or anything. It's kind of like you actually just have to stand your ground.
Yeah, when I say enforce your will, I mean that in a very loose and broad way. So it could just be being an immovable object.
Yeah.
It could just be doubling down on yourself. That's what I mean. I don't mean you have to go do something physical to others. It is again, back to what I was saying. It is you getting up and doing your push-ups. That's kind of where I was going with it.
And yeah, the last thing that I'd sign off with on this topic is that, too, I think when it comes to male aggression, is because that's what often gets labeled as toxic, or the ability and willingness, I guess, to engage in more conflict and competitiveness as well. But it's like that's never going away. That's in our biology, deep rooted. It takes 40,000 years roughly for any meaningful changes in evolution to happen. So the idea that you're just going to be able to implement some social messaging program and, get that male aggression out of, it's like good luck. But what you will see happen is what Freud warned about, where he said, unexpressed emotions never die. They simply get buried and come forth later in uglier ways.
Yes.
And it's like, that's where, so if you don't give men in general, but especially young men, healthy avenues for conflict, competitiveness, and aggression, then you're just going to boil it down until the one day where finally they snap. And this is where I think a lot of the, now it's obviously an oversimplification, but the school shootings and these kind of things that you see happening more and more, I think is a result of that. That's that unexpressed emotion coming forth later in a much uglier way. And I look at it actually much similar to superheroes when they first have their powers, but they don't know how to channel them, right? And that's what every one of those stories kind of shows, is that like a mentor, essentially an older man or a more masculine figure that has that aggression and conflict under control, has to come along and show the people that are just learning about this about themselves how to channel it and use it for good. But it's not about getting rid of it. And I think that's where we went entirely wrong as a society. It was like, not giving people a positive avenue, but just telling them to do away with that aspect of themselves.
Yeah, totally agreed. Same page.